Marion County, I'll even deliver and set it up for free. Call me 352-528-0020.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
Okay, 7 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Robin, your mother is up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, visiting family. And I know you were excited to find out how it all went. And so one of your relatives sent you some photographs on Facebook or something. And they also sent your brother the same photographs. And you wrote a nice thank you letter that was on email or Facebook. And it was like maybe 3 paragraphs long. And your brother sent a nice thank you that was like 4 words long.
Exactly.
And you said, look at the difference between what he does. And I say, men are from Mars. Women are from Venus. That's what they say.
That's
but
right.
They didn't say it until he said it, and he is Dr. John Gray. That's where we get that expression from. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. He is the author of that very, very well-known book. He's got a new book out, and we're going to learn about that in a moment. He is a doctor of psychology. You've probably seen him on some of the shows on TV, and he's a contributor to Dr. Oz, The Today Show, Good Morning America. He's everywhere. He's a student of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Him and Ringo Starr both were. So we're going to talk about the differences between men and women. And I think, truthfully, that once we figure this out, this is not just between men and their girlfriends, wives, and their husbands. This is father and daughter. This is brother and sister, right? This is the difference between us all. Dr. John Gray, what an honor. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you.
Yeah, you actually coined a figure of speech that everybody uses. How does that feel?
It feels good. It feels good. And I continue to teach these ideas. I travel a lot around the world now, and it's still enriching everybody's relationships. It's counterintuitive to understand differences. We tend to, when we get close to someone, we tend to think, well, they're going to think the way we think, and really, not everybody thinks the same. And I love your example. It's like the 3 paragraphs versus the one-liner,
4
which
words,
is guys.
Yeah, that's all he had.
4 words, yeah.
Well, if you look at the speech part of the brain, it's much bigger and more active in women than in men. This doesn't mean that men can't talk or write. Some of the greatest writers have been men.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, men will tend to get to the point and say the least amount of words. They'll also try to always take the fastest route to get somewhere, the shortest. In a sense, we have a gene that says don't do anything you don't have to do.
but on the other side, it almost seems like that when you realize this, and as a man you say, oh gosh, that's really true. I really should speak more. I don't think the women want us to speak more. I think they're fine.
No, they're fine with that. They're fine with that. There's nothing wrong with our differences, and they actually kind of fit together like a peg into a hole. It fits perfectly, which is women have a greater need to talk. And when women talk on a personal relationship, in business, men will tend to talk more. They're solving problems. If you're using words to solve problems, men will tend to use more.
Okay.
But when it comes to social relationships, personal, intimate relationships, women will tend to, if they feel safe, they will tend to use more words. And why that is because when you express feelings, the hormone estrogen gets produced in the body, and estrogen is a hormone that lowers stress for women. It's very important for women to relax, to have estrogen, and they have 10 times more than men.
There's a scientific explanation. So now when Robin pointed out to me that her brother wrote 4 words and she wrote like 4 paragraphs, she said, she's what Robin said to me. She said, your species is so different than mine. I said, Robin, we're the same species.
I chose the wrong word.
I'm half of that species. I'm not the other species.
You're absolutely right, which is we have so many needs that are the same, but there are some significant differences, and that's where the misinterpretations and misunderstandings show up. Because a woman, if she doesn't understand and accept that men are different, he might just write 4 words, and she goes, oh, he doesn't care. And that's a misinterpretation. It has nothing to do with caring. It's just a man is going to be like, hey, do I have to say more than 4 words? No, I don't have more than 4 words that pop up in my brain.
But I think in the beginning, when people first started grasping your concept, they thought it all applied to sexuality differences, and it's not. It's about. That's why I said this is not just about husbands and wives. This is about fathers and daughters, brothers and sisters. This is about all of us.
You know, I have 3 daughters, and I have such great relationships with them. And when they were growing up, they're all grown now, but when they were growing up, the parents used to call me to find out what the kids were thinking and doing. Because my kids would talk to me, because I had this awareness that females particularly need to feel heard. They need to have somebody ask questions like, well, tell me more. Well, help me understand why. And often they would say, well, what do you think, Dad? And I said, well, what do you think? I would always try to get them to talk a little more and not sort of push my ideas on them. And then they wanted to know my ideas. Now, the same thing is true of boys, but in a different way. It's not like you got to get them to talk a whole lot, but you have to be careful that they completely shut down. I mean, because you want good communication with your kids, and whether it's a boy or a girl, if you're always giving advice when they're not wanting to hear it, they'll shut you out. And it's really important that we listen more. And particularly for boys that are up to like 13 years old, they have a much greater need to be heard. Actually, what happens at puberty for males is their testosterone increases 5 times. And when testosterone increases 5 times, it builds his body into becoming a man. And testosterone is really important for men. Need 10 to 30 times more testosterone than females. And if they talk too much about their feelings, what will happen is their estrogen level goes high and their testosterone goes down. So this is why you know in the old days they'd say men don't cry, men don't talk about feelings. Now I'm never suggesting that we should shut people down and embarrass them or humiliate them for having feelings, because we all have emotions and feelings and they're really important. But we don't want to push people too far if they're not there. And sometimes we push too hard.
Do women understand men better naturally than men understand women? In other words, is your book more for men than it is for women?
Oh, the book is for both. Women, throughout the book, I'm always trying to balance it, which is here's how men misinterpret women, here's how women misinterpret men, and here's the difference. Women typically try harder directly in the relationship. Okay, so the part of the brain which governs relationship is called the right anterior parietal lobe in the brain, and that's bigger in every woman on the planet. Now, it doesn't mean she uses it, but it is bigger compared to men. For men,
wow.
the left anterior parietal lobe is bigger in men. And that has to do with fixing toasters and car engines and designing spaceships or whatever.
I must not have one of them. I'm horrible at that stuff.
Well, you'll have some way you do it, which is it's sort of impersonal fixing things. Men can have hobbies, and women go, why is he wasting his time doing that? Because it's comforting to the brain. Now, because we have these differences doesn't mean that we're always using them. So when it comes to relationships, women have more, in a sense, hormonal support to think about and try to make relationships better, and they experience greater fulfillment by putting their energy into that. Whereas men, it's not that we don't want relationships, it's not that we don't need love, but for a man, he goes into the bookstore and he buys his relationship book in the business section. Because if men know, you're not going to get a woman if you're out of work.
Right.
You need to have a job.
Right.
We want love. In a sense, we feel the need for love as much as women, but the way we get it is through doing things, achieving things, accomplishing things, and this is a reality. Women could love a guy reading Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That's actually a great thing for single guys to carry around. But if you're standing in line of unemployment, it's not going to be that attractive. There's priorities.
Right, absolutely. Dr. John Gray is our guest. Can I just take a moment and take a little break? We will be back. We've got other books to talk about as well that you've written. Which is the new one? Is it Beyond Mars and Venus?
Well, Beyond Mars and Venus comes out at Valentine's Day next year.
Oh, okay.
Right now, it's staying focused in a hyper world, how women tend to be overwhelmed instead of more relaxed.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that when we come back. We'll take a little break and be right back with Dr. John Gray.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accidents. Clouds will limit sunshine this Monday. There'll be some showers and a thunderstorm around, especially during the afternoon hours. The highs in the low to mid 80s. Monday night, partly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, those 72 to 76. Intervals of clouds and sun Tuesday with a couple of thunderstorms around, most numerous during the afternoon hours. The high 83 to 87. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Veterans are the foundation upon which our freedom is built. Listen to The Source, WOCA, each Thursday at 9 a.m. to Veterans News with Hank Whittier from Vets Helping Vets. You'll hear tributes, information on veterans issues, and stories that will make you laugh, cry, and feel proud. Veterans News always focuses on the military, past and present, and on our first responders. Veterans News is brought to you each week by Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens and Nursery, keeping you blooming since 1952.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
So, sugar-free gum versus mints, it's the gum. Big winner. Now, this could be a chicken and egg question. Is Target influencing nearby home prices, or are they opening stores in areas where home values are already rising? Realty Track didn't know, but still, it's good news if you live near a Target store. The next big thing is a droney. That's a selfie taken with a drone.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
FlySanford.com. Orlando Sanford International Airport. We are SFB. Simpler, faster, better.
Visiting friends and family, or just looking for some fun? Book your vacation now to one of their non-stop destinations, including Amsterdam, Brussels, Mexico City, San Juan, as well as over 60 domestic destinations, including New Orleans.
For enjoyable travel, come to Orlando Sanford International Airport. We are SFB. Simpler, faster, better. Before you fly, FlySanford.com.
All right, Dr. John Gray is our guest. He's on the phone, and you know him from so many popular books. Probably the most popular of the books he's written is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And right now we're talking about that, as well as the philosophy in general of what he does. Staying Focused in a Hyperworld was the book he just told us about. That is, I guess, the newer one. It says Natural Solutions for ADHD, Memory, and Brain Performance. Dr. Gray, part of your history is intriguing to me. The part being with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, your meditations, the fasting that you did, your brother, I think it was in Santa Monica. Can you talk about the things that led you to where you are today a little bit?
Oh, well, sure. It's going back 40 years. I was a kid of the 60s, and everybody's getting high, and the Beatles went to India to get high on meditation without taking drugs. So I thought that was a great thing, and also I thought it'd be really cool to meet the Beatles. So I took off, and my parents were very supportive to become a teacher of Transcendental Meditation. I ended up really loving it, being good at it, and I became the Maharishi's personal assistant. I lived with him. I taught his teacher training programs to thousands of people. It was my life for 9 years, and I was basically adopted the role of a celibate Hindu monk, and meditation was... We did all that, all the stuff people talk about today of mindfulness and meditation and the research. We started that research back in the 70s. And, that was a foundation for me in my life. I think some form of meditation is good for everybody, not just transcendental meditation, but it's learning to quiet the mind. That became a foundation when I started having relationships at 28. I had a different perspective. I was really quite happy and fulfilled within myself. I had an ability to cope with stress really well. So getting married, women were really from another planet. I knew myself really, really well. So women were very interesting to me. So I became a marriage counselor, and for 10 years I was listening to women complain about their husbands, and I realized that they're all the same. I mean, the complaints are almost always the same. And if I left my wife, I would just find another, so why don't I figure this out? Yeah. It was the similar things. It was things like he's less attentive, he's not as interested, he's not as romantic, he doesn't listen, he's trying to fix things. And I started looking at why, and how were men being misinterpreted, how were women being misinterpreted by men, because men were always, doing the wrong stuff.
But men weren't going to therapists to find out why their wives were behaving a certain way. It was the opposite. It was women going to the therapist, right?
As I mentioned before, 90% of women, 90% of the people who go to counseling are women. they're much more motivated to seek out help. Now, ironically, here's an interesting point. Ironically, when a woman seeks out help from an expert, it's something in science we now call pair bonding, where you're giving something and getting something back differently that's of value to you personally. That stimulates estrogen. It also stimulates a hormone called oxytocin. And these two hormones together lower women's stress quite dramatically. For men, it doesn't lower his stress. A man might go to a counselor, but he really is looking for kind of a coaching or a solving problems, or how do I fix this? Give me some another perspective. But for women, it's a different hormonal response that occurs in therapy. And part of, what happened in the whole psychology realm is that it became tilted towards women, because most of the people who came to therapists were women. Right. And so they wrote books on what do people need instead of what do women need. And that was really significant. And that's the contribution I made, is to say, wait a second, there's one kind of therapy for women, but there's a completely different one for men. And in relationships, we need to be giving women advice on how to deal with men and not treat men like women, and vice versa. Men don't treat women like a man and try to fix all our problems and solve it and so forth.
There's a new word in the English language called hangry. Have you heard of the word hangry?
No, what's that?
It's when you're hungry and you start to become angry because you haven't eaten in a while. And
wow, that's my new book. I should call it Hangry. Thank you. I got a new title for it.
and I'm wondering if that's not the same thing, maybe for a man, I don't know if it's for a woman, with sex. Like if you go too long without some kind of a sexual release, you start to become different. Like that commercial with the Snickers bar.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we want to go that direction, there's complete truth to that. And also for women as well. But for women, it's just 1 day a month. For men, it's 4 days a month. If you look at the hormonal balance of men and women, men's testosterone is the primary hormone. We have 10 to 30 times more, as I mentioned. And every seventh day, it doubles. And if there's not a sexual fulfillment at that time, men do become cranky and irritable and so forth. Likewise, for women, it happens when she's ovulating, or if she's beyond menopause. It tends to be around the full moon. The moon affects the waves and the water, but it also affects our hormones. And this is all science now. You can look at these huge studies that show that domestic violence occurs primarily around the full moon. And if you look at, as the therapist, domestic violence happens when men and women are arguing and fighting and so forth. And that typically is a time where, what man argues with his wife when his wife is really happy?
Yeah. Wow, interesting.
So the hormones actually change, and this is part of the new book that I've written, which is explaining how when at certain times of the month women's hormones are changing, they need men more. And if men can practice some of these ideas of little things make a difference, ask more questions, be more empathetic, make a plan, a romantic date, if you do it at certain times, 10 days after her period is the best time, and around the full moon, if she's beyond menopause, these are the best times for romance. And if you satisfy her there, if you fulfill the needs of her hormones at that time, her stress levels will be much lower, and she'll be much happier throughout the rest of the month. And for men, it's typically 1 day a week is to make sure that he's a happy camper. And these are biological needs that we all have. They're cycles that occur. They're measurable, and if we understand them, it gives us extra tips to make our relationships better.
So there's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and I didn't use the abbreviation because on purpose. I wanted the attention part to be kind of said. Does our attention get compromised because of physical needs or because of chemical influences like hormones?
Okay. So what we're seeing, hormones and brain chemicals. So that's the focus of this book, Staying Focused. We're experiencing an attention deficit, or flexibility, really. It'd be like if I have a problem, like when I'm writing a book, I'm totally focused. But I used to have this condition, which is often called ADD or ADHD, where my wife would talk and my mind would just wander. What she was talking about wasn't an urgent enough problem to grab my attention. So men are typically drawn by urgency and emergency. That stimulates testosterone. It also stimulates dopamine. And dopamine gives us focus and interest and motivation. And actually, couples are often saying, where did the passion go? Well, it's really, where did the dopamine go? Dopamine is stimulated by newness. And when the newness goes away, men tend to lose a lot of that initial interest and motivation, but it can be recaptured. Now, for women, it shows up differently. When the newness goes away, women's dopamine levels, again, begin to drop, and so what happens is they tend to become overwhelmed, focusing on newness in terms of a need over here, somebody needs me here, and their minds can't relax. And this is a phenomena which is occurring more and more every day, not just in our children, and not just diagnosed as a condition called ADD, ADHD. We might just call it, for women, feeling overwhelmed, and for men, losing interest and motivation in their relationships. And this is biological. You can measure these brain changes, and they occur. They occur in the brain when the brain is hyperstimulated. So let's take some few examples of this. When you're watching a video game, playing a video game, for example, stimulates high levels of this brain chemical called dopamine. Now, dopamine gives us pleasure, motivation, interest, and focus. So when we're hyper-focused, hyper-motivated, hyper-stimulated, that feels great. It's very pleasurable, but it desensitizes the brain to normal levels of stimulation. So what's happening is all of us, we're living in this fast-paced world. We're eating foods that also stimulate high levels of dopamine, which means that we're unable to stay focused and motivated unless we have high stimulation. Is that making any sense?
High stimulation seems to be a real key ingredient for me.
Does.
I mean, I can only talk for myself. Let's make sure we get the website is MarsVenus.com, correct?
Yes.
And who's Lauren?
Oh, Lauren's one of my daughters, and she is sort of following in my footsteps. She's the expert now.
All right. Well, Advice from Mars is you. Advice from Venus is Lauren, and that's on the website, MarsVenus.com. Are all of the books available on the website?
Yeah, people can go there. They can also get hundreds of free videos. I mean, it's really a fun place to go. And Lauren handles the younger generation, younger meaning under 50.
Okay. All right. Well,
there is a difference there, believe me.
Right, there's a big
Huge
difference.
It's been
this ADD thing, for women, it shows up as overwhelm, and it's hard for women to relax and focus on their own needs. And that's the thing that Lauren really helps women with.
Dr. John Gray, thank you so much for being on the air with us. Everybody go get the books and solve some of your problems, have better relationships. And the website again, MarsVenus.com. Dr. John Gray, thank you so much.
Well, what a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Delta Airlines has started to get planes back in the air again on a limited basis after a computer glitch grounded flights worldwide.
But it's warning passengers there will still be delays and cancellations. A power outage in Atlanta